Hey everyone, welcome to Module 11. Module 11 is actually one of my favorite modules because we look at the male-female differences in personality. And I know that a lot of people might not like that idea because I feel like it's almost not okay to talk about the male-female differences because nowadays we kind of look at, people as like a whole or as equal. And it's great that we look at the sexes as equal because, we don't have to say one is better than the other, but there are different key things that go on with men and women. So I think it's really interesting and still relevant to talk about not only biological differences, but personality differences that we have with men and women. So let's go ahead and kind of dive into that a little bit and see what we find. All right, so our learning objectives are listed here, and then our read and review is listed here as well. Now, when we look at male versus female brains, how are they different? All right, and I'm sure you might be like, I don't know, how are they different? Well, in terms of our way of thinking, our consciousness, our reasoning, our personality does have differences between men and women. You can watch this video, learn a few different things. The second thing here is the origin of gender. So what is the difference between sex and gender? I'm sure you guys might have covered this already in 101, but if you hadn't, or maybe you still need some clarity, we always in psychology look at gender as more of like a construct or like a theory. So when we're trying to define sex versus gender, we can look at like sex as being more biological and gender being more socially constructed. And this video is going to kind of dive into that. And that's, definitely in a psychological perspective. Some people think of those as like being connected. But when we talk about that in this class, that's kind of what we're, describing. So this is like more of an in-depth discussion about like historical explanations about how gender norms have changed and how that's kind of impacting cultures and how we see sex and gender. All right. And then even before I get into this video, I think that currently now we have even, we took obviously personality tests at the beginning of the semester, but even if we take like the big five and we look at aspects of our personality, we can see that certain sexes will score higher on certain big five factors. So like one of them was like agreeableness. Women are known to score higher on agreeableness than men overall. And now that could be a cultural thing because it is from culture to culture where, women kind of tend to be more agreeable. And it will be interesting to kind of see, over the next 20, 30, 50, 100 years, if that happens to change or not in terms of where men and women score on different levels of the big five and different personality characteristics and traits. And then on the big five sexual differences between genders, now we're going from just like personality traits to now different sexual differences. And I think this is it's a good video. It gives some kind of in-depth knowledge into how men and women are kind of wired differently. Now, this doesn't necessarily go across the whole board. So if you're watching this and you're like, well, I don't agree with that, or I don't think that's true, maybe that's not true specifically to you. But again, these are general ideas. So like I said, a lot of women will score more agreeable than men. Not all women are more agreeable than men. Some women aren't. And that kind of, again, is more of like across the board. So we're talking about majority of people and men and women, and that's just something to consider too. But I thought it's a pretty interesting video to kind of think about and the differences between the two sexes. All right, so go ahead and watch those videos. Your assignments this week include your discussion, your quiz, and then you're going to submit your personality essay. All right, so part of your midterm is going to be due this week. So before I get into that, let's go ahead and go over your discussion question. Your discussion question this week, of course, you're going to include a citation, just as always, but we're going to kind of, continue with this masculine and feminine idea. And in terms of, what's a masculine trait, what's a feminine trait, how are those ideas kind of forming you into the person you are today? And I think that it's important to kind of look at a few different things when we try to decide that. So when you look at them, historically, they've been considered kind of like opposite poles in terms of having like a certain trait. Are you like more masculine or more feminine? But I think that nowadays you can definitely have a combination, and that's more normal. But what do you believe to be the most notable differences in personality between men and women? Now, this of course can be physical, but in terms of personality, what do you think that that could be? Are those like specific personality traits, like I just said, like agreeableness, or maybe in terms of like aggressiveness, like a lot of times men are considered to be more aggressive. And that's just, again, a more masculine trait than it is a feminine trait. Can women be aggressive? Absolutely, they can. But you want to, list out what you think the most notable differences are. And then how does the concept of masculinity and femininity align with how a current society is changing our ideas on the way we view and treat each sex? I think that's an interesting concept to think about as well, because we are kind of trying to break away from masculine and feminine. But how is that going to maybe hurt or help our younger kids? Okay. And then what were your 3 favorite toys or games when you were a child? And then why did you gravitate towards these more than others? So maybe, if you were a girl, you really liked dolls and Barbies and all of those, stuffed animals. Or maybe if you're a girl, you hated that stuff and you liked, sports and you like to be more active. It really just depends. Just go ahead and list your favorite toys, and then maybe that kind of impacted whether you saw yourself as more masculine or feminine. I know as a child, we probably don't think that outside the box or that complex in our reasoning. Maybe we just like toys because we like toys, or maybe we have siblings or friends that influence our decisions. But go ahead and list that and explain maybe why you gravitated towards those toys. And then you're going to describe 3 examples of how you quote unquote learned to either be male or female. And then who are your primary teachers of that? So maybe you had, brothers, sisters, friends, maybe you lived with one of your parents and that kind of impacted that. Maybe you played sports or you did activities or in clubs and that also impacted that. So just go ahead and list that. And then the last thing, how do you feel, quote unquote, learning to be either male or female shaped your own personality characteristics? Okay. Maybe if you identify as one or the other more so, maybe you don't identify as the same sex, as the same gender. Maybe you don't identify with either. Go ahead and explain that if you feel like up to it. And, you can express how maybe some stuff from your childhood impacted that, or maybe that's something that you kind of came to terms with when you're older, and you can list that as well. So something to think about, kind of tying in your childhood with your personality now and your feminine, masculine traits. And we all have both. So think about those things. Okay. Going back to here, you have your discussion, your quiz, and then your personality essay. I'm going to click on this, going to open this up. So you're going to submit your personality essay to the Dropbox. It's going to have this rubric. This is what you're going to make sure that you look at and check to make sure everything is on here. If you have everything listed on the rubric, then you should be good to go. Make sure you look over the examples that I give you in the module folder under your term paper on the very homepage of the course. And then you're going to have the Turnitin. So when you turn it in, it's going to go through Turnitin, which is an software that checks for plagiarism. You really should be no higher in your similarity report than like 20, max 25%. If you're floating around there, then that's okay. But if you're anything higher than that, you really should look at your Turnitin report and then make some changes and then submit it again. So you can submit multiple times, but of course the last one that you submit, that's the one that I'm going to look at. So you only have, the discussion, you have the quiz, and then make sure that you submit this essay for your term paper. Other than that, I hope you guys enjoy male-female differences this week, and good luck with your papers, and I will see you guys in the next module.